This season, Instacart has your back to school. As in, they've got your back to school lunch favorites, like snack packs and fresh fruit. And they've got your back to school supplies, like backpacks, binders, and pencils. And they've got your back when your kid casually tells you they have a huge school project due tomorrow. Let's face it, we were all that kid. So first call your parents to say I'm sorry, and then download the Instacart app to get delivery in as fast as 30 minutes all school year long. Get a $0 delivery fee for your first 3 orders while supplies last. Minimum $10 per order. Additional terms apply.
Acast powers the world's best podcasts. Here's a show that we recommend.
What is The Briefing Room? It's a behind-the-scenes look at how the criminal justice system works and the lives of the people within that system.
If you love true crime, well, these are the real people who do the job every day of making sure justice is served.
Hi, I'm Detective Dave.
I'm Detective Dan. Together we have decades of experience in local law enforcement, a profession that we think is often misunderstood.
So we're going to explore how to do it right, and we won't shy away from when it's done wrong. These are stories you'll hear nowhere else. Unique, frank, and unvarnished.
From the team that brought you Small Town Dicks, this is The Briefing Room. Episode 1 drops on August 30th.
We'll meet you in the briefing room.
Acast helps creators launch, grow, and monetize their podcasts everywhere. Acast.com.
Somebody please think of the children!
And welcome back to Scarred for Life, the podcast where we open up old wounds by looking back at the films that scared us as kids. I'm Terry.
And I'm Mary Beth.
In each episode, our special guest will bring with them a movie that traumatized them as a child.
This week, our special guest is Joe Lipsett.
Yay.
He's one half of the Horror Queers podcast, and you've probably seen his written work everywhere. From Bloody Disgusting, to Consequence of Sound, The Spool, to his TV recaps with Terry, to his work with Anatomy of a Scream and Grimm Magazine. He's everywhere. Welcome to the show, Joe.
Thank you for having me.
Of course. I'm so excited. Sorry.
When other people say it out loud, it sounds like, Jesus, why can't this bitch just settle down at one site?
You're diversifying your assets, is that the stock term?
Right.
Gosh, yes, if only I could monetize that. Yes, I love it.
Joe, I have looked up to you since I started writing, and I'm very excited to talk to you. I feel like low-key like a fangirl, and I know Terry's like friends with you, so I'm like trying not to be weird, but I've like looked up to your writing since I started like last year, so I'm very excited to talk to you.
Oh my gosh, that's so nice. I love the fact that Valeska and I are actually just proofing, she just got a proof copy of the latest Grimm magazine, and we were looking through it, and I was like, oh, there's Mary Beth's article, yay!
I'm so excited for this issue of Grimm Mag. I'm so pumped. And I was so glad to write the article I did for it. I was very excited, so... Preview.
Yeah, I love reading Grimm Mag. I gotta look into submitting for it sometime. It's always great. There's
the new
always
call
so
for
many good
pitches is
articles.
coming out soon. I think I saw on Valeska's Twitter account.
Yeah.
It is. Yeah, we're going to be focusing on teen screams and teen horror stuff. So.
That's so exciting.
Mm-hmm.
So, Joe, what is your role with Anatomy of a Scream and Grimm Magazine?
So Valeska started. So I have multiple different writing partners, of which one of whom I consider you, Terry. And
yes.
So I started writing with Valeska because she has a website called Anatomy of a Scream, and then she's one of only 2 female horror creators that are publishing print that I know of. Although I should double check that because I know there's a UK publication called Suspiria.
Yeah,
they may be
really
female
cool.
run. But yeah, so it's like Andrea Subasati of Faculty of Horror who does Rue Morgue, and then there's Valeska Griffiths who does Anatomy of a Scream and Grimm Magazine. And I loved the work that she was doing. I met her in real life. She's the most amazing person. So I wanted to get on board and try to help out any way I could. So initially I was just writing, and then eventually she was like, hey, could you help me out with some editing? And then eventually I became the promotions manager as well. So I get to run some of the social media stuff with them. And my favorite part of the job is that I get to do the horror bracket. So every June we do a bracket. So the first year we did slasher films, and last year we did zombie films. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a lot of fun.
I love the bracket. It's such a good idea. It's so cool.
And I should give credit. We actually stole it from Save Horror with their permission. But we do it at a different time of year, so it doesn't conflict with them.
Cool. Yeah, everyone who's listening should really check out Anatomy of a Scream and Grim Mag. Grim Mag has been an amazing opportunity just like to write for print. And also just like Valeska is an amazing person to work with. She's an amazing editor and person. And like, it's such a well put together like piece of art. I guess it's so weird to say, but it feels like art. And it's like, she does most of it by herself, right? Like the layout and everything.
Yeah, she does all of the layout. She does the call for pitches. Like, it's one of the reasons why I wanted to help her out, because I was terrified she was going to burn out and then not be able to do it anymore. So between her and then CC Stapleton does the covers, and she also writes for the magazine, and the pair of them are they're honestly amazing. And it really bothers me whenever I see people being like, oh, women in horror that you should follow. And I'm like, these two should be top of your list. There's actually a bunch of folks here in Toronto. Like, we have this funny thing called the Salon Macabre, where we try to meet up once a month, and yeah, they're just like this bunch of badass bitches that I'm always like, okay, how can we make sure that you're getting the due and the opportunities? And they're all like, you can see them slowly climbing the ranks of different publications and different opportunities. And I'm like, yes, girls, get it.
That's awesome. I love that. And so you also have your own podcast. Well, you have two podcasts, actually. You have
only one's relevant.
Well, no, I listen to the other one as well, because I read young adult books often.
I read.
I read. That's so snarky. No, but so the Horror Queers podcast that you do with Trace, how did that all come together?
So Trace and I are both writers for Bloody Disgusting, and he's written there for much longer than I have. And I had always looked at his articles and been like, oh my gosh, there's a queer person writing about horror. What a novelty. Oh my God, I'm not alone. So when I started doing coverage of TIFF for them, I kind of used it as an opportunity to get in touch with Trace. So initially I said, hey, we're both queers. This is still something new for the genre, so we should do something together. So we began doing an article series, which is based on an epistolary fashion. So I pitched it as like, we just have to write letters to each other. We don't have to coordinate all that much. We just watch a film and then we'll do this thing. And we did that for a year, and I spent the year trying to convince him that we should do a podcast, because at that point, it seemed like nobody was doing it. And then in the interceding year, no less than a dozen queer podcasts showed up.
Yeah.
So it's kind of amazing. Like, it's honestly the best time for queer horror.
Yeah,
between
really
the
is.
Shudder documentary, between your site, Terry, between just the number of people who now feel comfortable calling themselves queer, whether that means bisexual, lesbian, gay, pan, trans. Like, it's so refreshing to hear all these voices. And I don't know, I like to think that Horror Queers helps to augment some voices of people who maybe deserve a bigger platform, or just people that they should be reading or listening to. And in the process, I've managed to find a person that I should have no relationship with, and yet we get along so well, and it's one of the highlights of my week every week.
That's amazing.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I mean, I feel the same thing when I listen to you two talk, to be honest.
No.
Yeah, this was, I mean, this all started, on kind of like a lark, and the fact that it just sort of happened, and I feel that Mary Beth and I have this like chemistry together. It's just, it's amazing. It's weird. It's so odd how that kind of happens. But I wanted to go back to your point about you saw Trace's writing on Bloody Disgusting. I think this really speaks to why representation is so important, because like for the longest time I didn't know that there was any other gay people writing about horror, and it was only by starting to like do some searching on podcasts and doing some like searching online to find writers and stuff that I realized that there is a little community, and it's kind of what helped kick me in the butt to start, because I was so afraid of sticking my toe in it that I would get like blowback, or that I would just be completely ignored, or constantly like made fun of, or and that hasn't happened with one exception. But yeah, so I think it's why representation is so important in our genre.
Yeah,
exactly.
100%. It's surprising the number of people, like, so when we first started doing the article series in particular, because it's on Bloody Disgusting, they have a very active comment section.
Oh yeah.
And yes, I'm not gonna throw Bloody Disgusting under the bus, because John Squires and Brad Miska are just absolutely great, and they're actually very open at letting people pitch them, whereas other sites are not quite as open to like novice writers kind of cutting their teeth on it. But yeah, some of the comment sections can be a little bit rough. So we would routinely get comments that, it's the same old kind of thing that you always see. It's like, why do you have to politicize horror? Why can't we just enjoy a good kill? Like, why do you have to make this about women? Why do you have to make this about being gay? And you're just like, because it's always been about that stuff.
Exactly.
And it's our time now. Like, we finally have the access and the representation, and the people who are willing to stick their necks out and say, you know what, I have a different read of this film.
Yeah.
And it's only because people have been willing to say, you know what, I identify as insert fill in the blank, that we're now actually seeing a shift in culture.
Yeah. And different ways to, like you mentioned, different ways to read things. And I was thinking, this is not related to horror, but I kind of cut my teeth a little bit in the video game realm, writing, and I left it because it's a cesspool of
yeah, it's like people. There's different levels of cesspool, and I
right.
think video games, unfortunately, may be at the bottom.
Right, but I remember the biggest time, like the biggest thing was when Roger Ebert back in like the early 2000s was like, video games are not art. No. And then all the gamers would get upset, and I was upset too, because I consider some video games art in the same
Absolutely.
way that movies are, right? So, but like now we've come to this point where, okay, all right, gamers, it is art. So now we're going to analyze it from different ways, because that's what you do with art. And all of a sudden people are like, you're politicizing it. So they're doing the same thing. It's like this double-edged sword of like, okay, all right, you win, it is art, but so let's talk about it as if it is, and then you get the pushback.
Yeah, well, I think people start to get afraid. There's a bunch of people who have maybe never had to think of the thing that they love or that they make in a certain way, and now all of a sudden they're starting to get people creeping in from the margins and saying, oh, I've got this other read, or like maybe you should have done things a little bit different. And I think unfortunately there's a lot of, and yeah, I'm going to say it, it's a bunch of straight, white, rich men, and they may come in a certain combination of some of those traits, but they have never felt pushback. They've never had the world be anything but theirs. So all of a sudden to be confronted by black people or Hispanic people or gay people or women suddenly saying, can't you do better? Couldn't you have included something? Why did your story have to be told in this way? It's very terrifying to them, which I love.
Me too. It's great.
Yeah.
It's awesome. I wrote... I have a column on Bloody Disgusting about rape revenge movies directed by women, and boy, oh boy. Boy, oh boy, was that a fun... I shouldn't have read the comment section. I think Anya Stanley tweeted... I said, I read the comment section. She's like, oh, Carl, don't do that.
Oh, yeah. And Megan Navarro's like, I hit publish, and then I walk away.
Yeah. I was curious, and I'm never going to be curious again.
Well, I mean...
I just want to know.
It's just so sad, though, right? Because part of the reason that we write is, because we've got ideas and we're trying to get them down and we want to work through them. But also, I love the idea of engaging with people in a dialogue.
Yes. That's exactly what I love. Like, I love being able to, like, put that out there, but then have a conversation with people and, like, really dig into it. Because I've had a lot of experiences with people having a different perspective or a similar perspective, and we have a really good conversation. Yes. And I love that about my writing. I think, like, I don't want my writing to just go out into the void and just kind of exist without there being a dialogue.
Mm-hmm.
I don't write to just, like, have a byline. I write to talk
if you're
to people.
Yeah, if you're writing to just have the byline, then, I mean, I don't want to say you're doing it wrong, but it's harder to feel fulfilled, I find.
Yeah, especially in the horror community. I think for me, like, I just feel like I know so many passionate people in the community that might not be writers, but have, like, a lot of awesome opinions. And it's just great to be able to share those opinions with them and talk to them on Twitter or wherever.
Mm-hmm.
It just feels weird not to want to engage with those people. At least, like, in a positive way. I don't want to...
Well, and that's the thing, right? It's this idea that we're doing this because we want to spark something in people. And I don't care if people don't agree with me. I like it when people don't agree with me because I want to hear what they have to say. And oftentimes they come back and they're like, oh, I thought about it in a completely different way. And that's fascinating.
Yeah, I love that.
But not when you're a dick about it.
Exactly.
Right. Like, and this is the difference, right?
People are always like, oh, well, you don't like people disagreeing with you. I'm like, no. That is not true. I don't like when people are mean to me when they disagree with me. Or they, like, talk down to me when they disagree with me. It is very different. Yeah. I love a good debate. I just don't like it when the person tries to punch down and belittle. Very different.
Which is why I so appreciated that really extended conversation that you had about Black Christmas.
Oh, yeah.
Because I was 100% right there for it, because all I saw were people trying to dance their way around the fact that what they were reacting to was misogyny. And you're just like, if you don't like the film, that's 100% fine. But if you say, oh, you know, like, if men had have written this, it would have been so much better. Or, you know, these two bitches don't have any talent, or the message is so on the nose. And you're like, but those are different kinds of criticisms. You're not actually engaging with the film anymore. You're talking about how you don't want women in horror.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. It's ridiculous. And it's like, it's hard and kind of discouraging sometimes for me to see that kind of conversation where people don't understand, like, that kind of criticism is bad. And they're like, what do you mean? Like, you're a critic. You say you disagree with, like, you don't like things sometimes. I'm like, yes,
you don't like things all the time.
It's not based on their gender or their race. It's just based on storytelling. It has nothing to do with who they, like, I don't know. It's just very frustrating that it seems so hard to have, like, a nice conversation, even if it doesn't, like you said, Tara and I had a great conversation, and we didn't agree, but it wasn't, like...
Yeah, it's not like you started punching each other below the belt.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, and it's nice. The thing I liked about it is being able to have a conversation with someone and kind of... I mean, I could definitely see where Mary Beth is coming from, and I was hoping she could see where I came from.
Oh, I
and
definitely saw where you were coming from, 100%.
Yeah, so it's just it's one of those things where it's like, I mean, this is what art is, and this is what we should be doing with art. You put it out there, and then people bring with it their experiences, and then they discuss it, and then I don't know. It was one of the things where, like, we were talking about, should we talk about this, and then it just sort of blossomed into that 30-minute conversation.
And if you have to ask yourself, should we talk about this? The answer is always yes.
And I'm so glad we did, because I have just, like, I wrote a review for it for Much Ado About Cinema, but I had just so many thoughts, so many personal thoughts, so many feelings. So I fucking love that movie, and like, through all of its imperfections, I totally know there are flaws, but you know what? Fuck it, I love that movie so much.
And honestly, I'm fingers crossed right now. You can't see me, but I am crossing my fingers. I think that people's opinions will change when they have some distance from it, but also if we get an R-rated cut of that on a Blu-ray or a VOD release, if we can watch it the way it was actually shot. I appreciate everything April Wolf and Sophia Takal were trying to accomplish, but let's be honest, if we can see the R-rated cut, I think a lot of people will start to change the way that they felt about that. The message is always going to be heavy-handed because that's what they intended. Yeah. But I think it will play better as a film if we can see some of that gore. And I swear, I'm not even like an R-rated person.
Yeah. No, not either.
It's just that film was so obviously shot for an R rating, and then they had to hack it down to a PG-13. Like, I've never seen a film so egregiously edited down.
Yeah, I was pretty bummed about that.
That's the thing in the conversation between like PG-13 horror and R-rated horror. I don't care, but if you're making it for that rating, then I want to see what you made, right? So like you said, if you shot it as a rated R movie and then you decide to cut down as PG-13, that's when I have a problem with it. But when you had like a PG-13 movie in some cases, and then they just start throwing in all this other stuff because let's make it R now, and you kind of change the intent of it. Yeah. I don't know. That's where I kind of get a little iffy both ways, but.
Well, I think that's where the art starts to change into consumerism because you're immediately beginning to think, okay, who is our audience? How can we make money off of this? And unfortunately, those are decisions, I guarantee you, we're not in control of those two women creators.
Absolutely not.
Oh, right.
Absolutely not. No way. And, they were talking, I saw something on Twitter, I think it was from April, about how, there were certain scenes they had to cut references to rape. They couldn't say the word rape a certain number of times or something, and they had to edit a lot of things around for the MPA rating, the MPAA rating, and there was a lot of really weird.
Fucking hate the MPAA.
Yeah, and there was a lot of things around mentioning sexual assault and saying the words that affected the rating too, and it was really weird. There was a lot of. It sounds like there was a lot of having to edit in very weird ways around very particular / arbitrary requirements from the MPAA. So I mean,
because female sexuality is one of those things that will get you an R rating or an NC-17, which is insane. We are literally politicizing and policing women's bodies. But sure, there's no issue at all. No, it's completely fine.
It's my favorite. I love it. Awesome, guys. Please continue to police my body. It's awesome. Happy 2020. Anyway.
It's a brand new decade. It's a brand new year. Things are going to change this year. Come on.
I can only hope.
Shit, I have torpedoed your podcast, haven't I? I apologize.
No, I love it. This is amazing.
So speaking of 2020, what have you guys been watching recently?
What have I been watching? So my 2020 has been off to a really weird start in terms of watching first watches, but I did watch Sweetheart.
Oh, okay. Yes.
J.D. Dillard's monster movie, and I love it so much. I mean, I think I've seen a bunch of this on Twitter, but the reveal of the monster is the best, one of the best scenes of 2019. And I just absolutely love, what's her name? Kiersey Clemons? Not
yes.
Kiersey. Is it Kiersey Clemons?
Yeah.
She was so good in Sweetheart. I mean, most of the film, she carries most of the film, and she barely talks, and it's just her physicality and the way she carries this role is just so enthralling to watch. And I mean, I could have just watched it without it being a monster movie, and then you have this added kind of horror aspect, and I just absolutely loved it. It was a good, tight monster film, and man, oh man, and it's on Netflix now, everyone, or at Amazon Prime, so check that one out because I'm heard a lot about it and I'm so glad I watched it. It's one of the best, not my favorite, one of my favorites 2019, but up there. Such a good movie. Yeah. And then I finally watched Ginger Snaps.
Oh, hey.
I need to watch that.
That's not new, but I finally watched Ginger Snaps and obsessed. And now I want to write a lot of things about werewolves. So get ready for that, everybody. I have a lot of feelings about the gender dynamics of werewolves that I really am fascinated with. And I want to read more about it because I know it's not a new topic, but I just have a lot of interesting thoughts and feelings about the way that women versus men are portrayed as creatures of the night. So, yeah, that was an amazing first watch as well. I love the werewolf design specifically is so cool.
Yes, practical effects forever.
So good. And the progression, and I mean, I've seen screen caps of it before, but just the progression of her hair slowly turning white and then the hair growing on her face. And it was just such an amazing way to depict transformation.
And I think it's impossible to watch that movie without falling in love with Catherine Isabel as well.
My gay heart.
I'm not even like, oh my god, like I'm a queer man, I'm totally in love with her. Yes, queen, fierce. Like she is sexuality embodied in that movie.
Like, I am a queer woman, and I was like, I want to be your friend and also your girlfriend.
Mm-hmm.
Like, she is just such, like, the vibe around her is just, like, confidence, and she has this, like, aura of just, like, knowing what she's doing and, like, always being very sure of herself. And it's, like, from the very beginning, she has that vibe, and I just absolutely love it. And then it reminds... So, have you seen When Animals Dream?
No.
Either of you?
Mm-mm.
It's a Danish werewolf movie, and it's about a girl. Again, it's a girl turning into a werewolf, and it's amazing. And I think they take a lot of signals from the werewolf design in Ginger Snaps.
Oh, interesting.
I would definitely recommend that. It's a really good movie.
Okay. Well, I'm gonna do a recommendation. I'm gonna give you 2 recommendations, Meredith.
Okay.
If you want to stay with female empowerment werewolves, I'm sort of spoiling it, but there's a Brazilian film called Good Manners.
I am obsessed with Good Manners.
Okay, fantastic.
I actually wrote I write a column for Nightmare on Film Street, and I wrote about Good Manners, and it's one of my columns for, like, foreign, like, non-American horror you need to watch.
Yes.
And that was one of them.
Because that is 100% one of those films where it is not getting the credit or the awareness that it deserves.
It's so good.
And then the other film, not werewolf, but it's in my quadrilogy of female coming-of-age monster films, which is Raw, Ginger Snaps, oh, shit. I've forgotten one of them. But the most recent one is Blew My Mind, if you haven't seen that.
I love Blew My Mind.
It's so good.
You know what? I think my favorite movie besides vampire movies is when young girls turn into weird monsters.
Yes.
That's my favorite. It's the best.
Because it's the perfect metaphor for a coming-of-age sexuality, merging into adulthood. But then I don't know, there's just something so empowering about these films because they're playing with the sexuality of it, but they're acknowledging how monstrous becoming an adult can be.
Yeah.
There's just... And, like, you don't see the equivalency for men. Like, because there's no interest in men becoming sexually active. It's like, no, that's fine. Just get it away from me.
That's interesting. I had never actually thought about that. And I also feel like people are so scared of female bodies.
Mm-hmm.
And, like, are so confused by them sometimes. And, like, weird processes that we go through. But also, like, men go through some weird shit, too.
We really do.
I mean, you don't get your period, but it's like, I don't know. I feel like you still get the hormonal stuff. And, like, I don't know. I feel like it's just as nightmarish, just in a very different way. But I cannot speak to that as I am.
But the difference is that it's male creators. So
that's good. That's true.
If you want to think about men being afraid of women, it's like, yeah, we need to turn these burgeoning adult women into monsters.
Hell yeah.
Well, and I think that it's...
If they're eating men, then I'm all for it.
Hell yeah. Kill them.
Kill them.
Just kill them.
Just do it.
Terry, what have you been watching?
So by the time this episode airs, the embargo will be up, and I know all 3 of us, I'm pretty sure, have seen this movie, and we all 3 have different reactions. So I wanted to throw this out there to kind of have like a little discussion maybe, but I finally saw Color Out of Space.
Oh God.
And Mary Beth, you really like this
I
one,
love
right?
Color Out of Space.
And Joe?
No, I despised it.
Really? Oh, I'm interested to hear why.
I mean, I can give you 2 short answers, and then maybe we can use that as a conversation builder.
Okay.
So I don't like Lovecraft, and not just as a person. He's a terrible person, but I often don't like a lot of the films and TV shows that kind of have a Lovecraftian influence.
Okay.
I know that doesn't always resonate with the 2 of you. I'm a very narrative-driven person, and Lovecraft does not adhere to that.
Okay.
You're right.
Valid. I'm obsessed with Lovecraft, but again, it is not. He is like cosmic horror is not for everyone.
No, and it's one of those things where I almost watch from the corner and say, like, if only I could, because when I see people talking about how much they love Lovecraft or cosmic horror, I just think, I don't feel that way. So there was that, and then, to be honest, there's the Nicolas Cage of it all.
Yep.
Oh, you didn't like Nicolas Cage?
Okay, so I don't necessarily think that he's doing a bad job. He's not my favorite actor.
Okay, yeah.
But I think the issue with him in this particular film is that there are moments where he's supposed to go cuckoo bananas like he normally does. But then there's also moments where he's supposed to have really emotionally grounded interactions about his, family members who are decaying and merging, and all this crazy shit is happening. So I saw this at TIFF, and it premiered at Midnight Madness, and the audience was eating up the insanity.
That was me.
but then when he was being serious, people were still laughing.
Yeah, that's true. I think I was also guilty of that, because it felt like he was playing his character in Mandy again.
Mm-hmm. But it's not Mandy. Like, this film
No,
is
I know.
emphatically not Mandy.
Oh, exactly.
And that's the problem, is people look at it and they're like, oh, it's just the latest Nicolas Cage gonzo movie. But I don't actually think that's what the film is going for. But I think by casting him, it loses a lot of the emotional resonance. And for me, it just became a slog. Like, it's a really long movie as well. So for someone who doesn't like cosmic horror and who felt like that main character was miscast, it just doesn't connect.
Okay.
Yeah, and see, it's interesting to hear the both of you talk, because, like, in one part I'm in Joe's camp, and in the other part I'm in Mary Beth's camp. Because, like,
which is which, Terry?
Because I don't like Nicolas Cage,
No.
and I feel what bothered me is the same kind of thing that kind of bothered you in this movie, Joe. But also, it felt like he was channeling Trump. Like, when he was going crazy, all of a sudden his voice took on Trump mannerisms.
Oh, interesting. I didn't even think about that.
It really took me out of it. And he was supposed to, for most of the film, he's supposed to be kind of like the bedrock, the emotional foundation of this family that is deteriorating around him. And then eventually he succumbs to it as well. But I never really got that from him.
No. He's on a completely different level. Like, every single member of this family is acting in a completely different film.
Yeah, and on some degree, I kind of feel that kind of ties into the idea of this: what would happen if this color from outer space that you've never experienced before, it's going to affect people in different ways. And so I kind of dug that aspect of it, that everyone felt like they're in a different film. I mean, you have the one girl who's like riding horses, and it almost looks like she could be in some like fairy tale like story. And then you have it was a Chong, one of the Teacher Chong, I can't remember, is playing the guy on the edge of in the little hut that's smoking. And I don't, it's just so, like, I love whenever I say this, I have to, of course, caveat it with I hate the guy, but I love Lovecraft stories. Okay. So from that aspect, I thought this was a very overall, like, narratively, a very faithful adaptation of that story, which is one of my favorite of his short stories. It's just, I wish that they had cast someone other than Nicolas Cage.
Yeah, because we're really living in this world now where if you see Cage in a film, you go in expecting a certain type of performance, and when that gels with what the movie is trying to accomplish, like Mandy, then it all comes together, right? And then when you see it in something where he's just playing at a different pitch than everybody else, like, I watched the terrible action movie Primal last year. Yeah. And you're just like, where, what, why? Like, it doesn't come together at all. And that's just because, I mean, for love or hate, Nicolas Cage is kind of just out there in his own realm. And when he lands a good project or something that fits his sensibility, it's a marriage made in heaven. But otherwise, it's just like, no, this is not working because he is not right for this role or this movie, and he are out of sync.
Yeah. Yeah.
But, like, it's been weird to have seen this film. Like, I think I saw it, Mary Beth, maybe you can remind me, but I think the Toronto premiere at TIFF was the world premiere.
I mean, yeah, it was.
So to see it and have just this overwhelmingly negative reaction, and then to watch other people talk about it like, oh, that was one of my favorites from Fantastic Fest. Oh, this is the movie I'm most excited to watch in 2020. And I'm just like, oh, I'm on the margins here. Okay.
Well, it'll be interesting when it comes out, like, to wider audiences to see what people think, because I loved it because I am like a very, very big fan of cosmic horror, Lovecraft adaptations. And like Terry said, Lovecraft is a shitty human being. He is terrible. But I think
he has produced some great art.
He's produced some great art. And I think the way he has influenced like better people and better projects is important. Because instead of just calling it Lovecraftian, I like to call it cosmic horror. So it doesn't like put all the onus on him for being like...
Right.
I like that. Anyway, it removes his power.
It removes his power. So cosmic horror is one of my all-time favorite subgenres. I've written a lot about it, and then it's really hard to find good cosmic horror because when it is done poorly, it is done very poorly, and I think it is a very hard... they're hard concepts to really put onto film because cosmic horror is about, like, indescribable feelings and, like, overwhelming madness and incomprehensibility, and that is so, I feel, so hard to really capture. Yeah. And I think that this movie, for me, and what I have seen, captures that kind of incomprehensibility and insignificance in such a great way that I have not seen in a lot of cosmic horror. And like I've seen that. I mean, like a couple of things that come to mind are like The Endless, like the Benson and Moorhead do cosmic horror, I think, really well, especially with The Endless.
Love it.
And
Spring, really.
And Spring too, yeah. And I just was really taken aback by how much Color Out of Space took that and put it also in a contemporary context and made something so engaging for me. I didn't feel the runtime, and it just felt so crazy, but so in the vein of what I look for in cosmic horror. Like, it wasn't afraid to be batshit crazy. It wasn't afraid to take risks. And while not every risk paid off, for me, it was successful in terms of trying to take the themes of cosmic horror and put them into a film adaptation that is, like, based in the contemporary and does something wild.
Mm-hmm. And I will confess, it's a gorgeous looking movie. Like, when things start to fall apart, it's visually just amazing to watch.
Yeah.
I'm really excited. It's playing at Panic Fest, and I'm really excited to see it actually in a theater, to see what my experience is with it as opposed to being on my little TV.
Yeah. And I'm excited to watch it again because I think I watched it on Festival Brain. So Festival Brain, I had been watching movies.
It's a real problem.
It is a real problem. Like, Festival Brain is real. Like, you just have, like, you're watching movies so much back to back, and, like, your conception of things is a little bit twisted. So, like, I mean, and I was so tired. We saw it at midnight at TIFF. So I was exhausted.
It's a lot.
And so, like, I want to watch it again and see how I feel about it now as opposed to when I was at TIFF, because maybe it'll change. But overall, I just absolutely enjoyed the batshit crazy ride that was that movie, and it includes alpacas, which is fucking weird.
The meat of the future.
So, I don't know. I fell for it. And that's fine. I loved it.
What about you, Joe? What have you been watching recently?
Okay, so since the new year has begun, I have checked out the new Grudge film.
Oh, how
have
was
you two seen this?
I have not. The online reactions are making me not sure if I want to see it in theaters.
Yeah, Same. They are not kind. That's for sure.
Yeah, and I feel so bad. Nicolas Pesce is such a good director.
Well, I think that's actually been one of the more interesting stories to come out of this, are the people who have seen his previous films and questioning whether or not he was the right person or how much of his sensibility has made it into this final product.
Okay.
Because this film has had a very
It's had a wild
production.
Yeah, it's had a wild
It was supposed to come out last summer.
It was supposed to come out last June.
Yeah.
And then they pushed it back. And it's not because, like Disney bought Fox or something like that. Like, apparently Underwater is in the exact same situation, but that's a merger situation. That's why it hasn't been released. Okay. Whereas The Grudge, I think they realized that there was some issues with the final product, and that's why they postponed. So I haven't seen The Eyes of My Mother, but I have seen Piercing. I don't know that it feels like his film. People have referenced a meanness in this film that I can definitely see from Piercing.
Oh, yeah.
And I've heard that Eyes of My Mother is even more so. Like,
it is.
Yeah, just nothing but, this is a hard film to watch.
Yeah, it really is. It will linger in your head.
I think the biggest issue with The Grudge is that it doesn't feel like it's bringing anything new to the table. So it's playing within the conventions and the tropes of that Grudge Ju-on universe. Mm-hmm. But, this is not a series that favors characterization. So even though there's really good people in this movie, like there's a lot of... You watch the people and you're like, oh, Damien Bashir. Oh,
cast is stacked.
Yeah, like all of these people are really great, but the narrative doesn't favor character development. So there's little glimpses, like everyone in the movie is dealing with some kind of personal emotional trauma. So it's like a husband has died, a mother has died, we've got a child with a developmental disorder. All of these people are dealing with big things, but that doesn't feel like it goes anywhere, and it doesn't inform the trauma that they're about to experience by entering this cursed household.
Right.
And then the other big issue is that this is a transplant, so it's not set in Japan like the 2004 version with Sarah Michelle Gellar, which I think was the strongest component of that film.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And like the new house design is like, it looks like a fucking generic house. It could be from the Conjuring universe, and you wouldn't notice.
And then The Grudge, it was an iconic house like that.
Oh my god, yes.
Yeah.
They spent a lot of time making that house distinctive and unique.
That staircase.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and I just feel like I haven't seen the new one, but for me, just taking it out of Japan also takes away a lot of like the weight of the belief in the spirit. Like, Japan has such a rich and complex pantheon of spirits in Japan, and the history, just the way they associate with spirits is very complicated and very complex and fascinating. And I feel like taking that out of Japan takes a lot of that context and a lot of why it's so terrifying.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, it seems like a very weird choice to me, and I don't know if appropriative is the right word, but kind of appropriative in a way where it's you're missing. I mean, and this happens, I feel like, so much with American adaptations of Japanese films. It's you just miss that.
Yeah.
You don't have that same kind of cultural connection to spirits and to ghosts that they do, so it doesn't feel as terrifying, I think.
No.
In that context, I guess.
And amusingly enough, the film almost seems to be implicitly acknowledging that, because the ghosts in this film are Americans. It's an American woman who's come back from Japan because she was like, there's something wrong with this house. So she's the one who brings the curse. And then she becomes the new Kyoko, and she kills her family. But by doing so, you're almost acknowledging, oh yeah, Americans just steal stuff from Japan, and then we get this watered down lesser version of.
That's something.
Yeah, it's not great.
I don't know how I feel about that one, but okay.
No. I mean, I think at the end of the day, the F cinema score is shocking to me.
Yeah,
it's not a film that's so bad that it deserves that, and it's not divisive enough to merit that. It's kind of boring. That's the biggest complaint.
I still really want to see it because I love The Grudge. So, and I liked the 2004 version when I saw it when I was younger. I mean, I haven't seen it in a long time. It didn't age
well for me.
What'd you say?
It didn't age well for me. I just recently watched it, and
I need to revisit it because
I mean, this is also a little boring in hindsight.
Yeah, so I'm excited to see it. I know that it might not be very good, but still.
Yeah, I mean, it's not the worst film that you're going to see this year. It's more, you look at it and you can see some of the missed opportunities.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So I saw that, and then Dracula and the Sonata, and I'm not sure either one of those are really interesting enough to merit talking about.
Yeah.
So we talked about what we've seen recently, but maybe we can go back to the past and talk about the film you brought with you this week. Joe, what are we talking about?
I apologized off air, but I'll do it again now that we're recording. So I'm sorry to say that I have brought to you Ghoulies from the early 80s.
So
I am so excited that you did, but we have a little plot synopsis. Do you want to dig into it, Mary Beth?
Yeah, because I had actually never heard of Ghoulies until we were about to record this episode. So I'm hoping that this will be helpful for some other people.
Yes.
So released in January 1985, Ghoulies is an amalgamation of much better movies that will make you wonder why you're not watching those instead. Mm-hmm. From the chest-bursting violence of Alien, the gooby creatures from Gremlins, to a Party City version of the clown from Poltergeist, and the climax of Return of the Jedi, nothing is spared. The story is slight. It's about a 35-year-old teenager, Jonathan Graves, Peter Lipus, who decides to quit school, summon demons, force his girlfriend to become his slave, wear plot important sunglasses, and basically, we're not sure. Bring back his father from the grave?
Yeah.
But the biggest twist is that it's actually a stealth prequel to Hereditary.
Oh, Pyman. Hail Pyman.
I mean, like, this guy looks like he is not a teenager. Like, I was watching this morning with my boyfriend, and he was like, he's a college student? Are you joking? He looks like he's 40. I'm like, exactly. Mm-hmm. I don't understand how old he is supposed to be.
So they say in the film he is meant to be 25 years old, which by my math, he should have still already graduated college by that age.
Yeah, that's ridiculous.
Right. The entire cast looks way too old to be college students.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So, Joe, how old were you when you first saw this movie?
Okay. So I'm going to provide you with a bit of context, because if I'm being honest, the real film that I should have brought to you is Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
So, but that's not a horror film, and I didn't want to just come in to talk solely about the one scene where they open the Ark of the Covenant and everybody's face melts off, and how that gave me a literal month of nightmare, like, unable to sleep, having to stay with my parents, and my parents literally telling me, okay, you are no longer ever allowed to watch scary movies. But the fun thing that people should know about me, so I've talked on Kill by Kill, I've talked on my own podcast about how my horror indoctrination was really two Clive Barker films, which was Candyman and Hellraiser. And those are two films that I absolutely love, and I'll talk about them to anybody. But the real reason that those films, which were released at the end of the 90s the end of the 80s or the early 90s, are my introduction to horror, is because my parents paid me to not watch television and movies throughout the 80s.
Oh.
Excuse me?
Yeah, so they were afraid...
I need some more information on this one.
So they were afraid of media. Like, they wanted me to have an imagination. They wanted me to go outside. They were, I think, rightly afraid that I was just going to waste away watching movies or living inside the home all the time.
Okay.
So they were like, we will pay you $100 a year to not watch TV or movies. And at the time, when you're a kid, you're like, yes, absolutely, $100 is like
$100 a year. That's
like
$1
million.
That's true. When you're a kid, that's like, oh my god, that is an incomprehensible amount of money.
Yeah, like I could buy so many Sega and Nintendo game cartridges with this money.
God. Yes.
Oh, yeah.
So my only exposure to media, like I've actually had to go back and consume 80s media because it was a huge gap for me as an adult. So I never watched Simpsons. I had never watched Murphy Brown. I had never watched like any of these sitcoms. And of course, I had definitely not watched horror because my parents had forbidden me from watching anything. Enter Ghoulies, which I saw at a slumber party when I was about 7 or 8 years old. So this is the advent of the VCR. I had gone over to a friend's house, and there was a group of us. We had rented a movie, and there's this iconic movie poster for Ghoulies, which is some creepy little fucker coming out of a toilet.
Yep.
And all you can think of as a little kid when you see this is, what is that? I need to get it into my eyeballs right now. So we rent this movie, and I haven't seen this movie since. So going back and revisiting it, as I'm sure you've had many podcast guests comment before, you know, like, I barely remember parts of this, and yet there are certain iconic scenes that just stand out in your mind, and you're like, oh, right, that was the thing. So for me, the big thing that I remember from this movie was the opening scene where it's just like some cult trying to sacrifice a baby, which is terrifying.
Right.
Like, is this Willow? What am I watching?
Oh my god, I know.
There's another movie it's pulled from, right?
Yeah. Oh, this movie is fucking cobbled together by better movies. You are 100% right, Mary Beth. So there's that. And then the other scene was where just all of the friends die and nobody seems to give a shit until that final battle where you just see all of their bodies slumped with bloody wounds seeping through their robes. And I remember thinking, what if I just randomly discover some body under my bed with, you know, a hole in it? And wouldn't that be terrifying?
Yep.
Wow. Yeah. So I'm really glad that you did pick this movie though, Joe, because I was trying to think. I to my knowledge, I had never seen this movie before in my life, and as I was doing some like digging on Wikipedia and stuff, things were coming back to me, and it turns out that I have seen part of it. Oh. I remember renting this. My parents rented this movie. It was PG-13, and we started watching it, and we literally got to the scene in the opening where the woman's chest is bursting open.
Yep.
And my parents turned
they were like, and that's enough for that.
Which is so weird. And because here's the thing, like I was somewhere between 7 and 9 when I saw this. It must have been. But I had seen Alien when I was 8. Oh. And they let me watch that. And they were taking joy in making me watch. And I have a story about that I'm hoping we'll talk to at some point. But so I was trying to think back about what was it about this movie that made my parents say, no, this is the one you're not watching. And I think it has to do with Satanism. Mm-hmm. Oh. Because my dad has had a weird fascination and aversion to the occult. He has books on the occult, on Aleister Crowley. And I remember when I was a teenager, I got into role-playing games, Dungeons and Dragons and everything. And I remember branching out of that and one time buying this White Wolf book called Mage the Accession. And it's basically just like, you know, a sit-down Dungeons and Dragons thing, but it was about mages, and they reference Aleister Crowley, and my dad found the book, and he's like, no, you can't have this. And I was a teenager at the time. So I'm thinking that maybe the whole reason I wasn't able to see this movie was because of the satanic panic of the 80s.
Yeah. Huh. Yeah. This film feels almost on the cusp of it, because I don't think the satanic panic really started to gather momentum until around the time that this film was coming out.
Right.
But when you watch it, you're like, oh shit, this movie is literally all about the concern that somebody's just going to find a book and start summoning spirits and trying to get Satan into your life.
Yep.
Which is hysterical, because there's nothing about this movie that's actually scary. And it's completely nonsensical. So the idea that you could watch this and be at all tempted to go to the dark arts, no.
I mean, you could shoot lasers out of your eyes and have like really weird mismatched eye placement. Did you guys notice that?
Oh my god.
Like,
that was okay. When I was watching this today, Steve and I were like, his pupils keep moving and one of them seems to just be on vacation, like on another side of his eye. And every time they showed his eyes, the pupils were different and the contacts were different. And it was just very confusing. And we were fixating on that, which tells you about what we were actually paying attention to.
Oh, because there is no plot. It doesn't make any kind of sense. So half the time you're just like, oh, okay, well, let's dig into what's going on with his eyes. And how did they achieve those green lights? And how come they're, why are they inconsistent?
Yes.
Yep.
So you said you hadn't seen this, right, Mary Beth?
I had never even heard of it. I am younger, which probably has something to do with that. So I'd never even heard of it. But so it's obviously like not the greatest movie. And I was very confused as to why all the marketing was about a little guy coming out of a toilet, and he only is coming out of a toilet for like half a second at one point. I was like so hype for this to be a movie about like little like toilet demons.
Yeah.
And it wasn't. And I was pretty bummed about that. I even texted Terry. I'm like, is this like going to be like weirdly have like queer subtext about like things bursting like into your ass and like weird like anti like gay subtext about like homosexuality? And Terry was like, no, Mary Beth.
Well, there is a lot of queer subtext, but not in the way you would imagine.
Yes.
But before we get to that, I really wanted to piggyback off because you both have talked about the image of the ghoulie coming out of the toilet, right?
Classic 80s mismarketing.
Yes. Well, here's the funny thing about that. After the movie was over, because I'm a glutton for punishment, I found that there's a Ghoulies making of that was included in the Shout Factory Blu-ray.
Oh, nice.
And it was on YouTube.
Yep,
so I watched it. And they were talking about, because Charlie Band, the guy that is like the producer for this, and his brother Richard did the music for it, who's also known for The Reanimator. Mm-hmm. So they were trying to come up with marketing, and he was high with some guy, and the guy's like, "Hey, here's the tagline: they eat your ass." Was it? And they're like,
what is the
like,
scariest thing to a straight man?
Right?
What's this?
Like, Charlie, here's the image. You get a fucking ghoulie coming out of a toilet, and the tagline is they'll eat your ass. And Charlie Band was talking about how, you know, he needed these to like run in New York Times, and there's like so many different things that you needed to do to like make sure that it was okay and that it would run, because their goal was to have this be a green band trailer that could run any time of the day and be featured in any magazine.
Right.
So
that's
they came up with "They'll Get You in the End," which is a little bit more.
See, that's why I was
honey.
like, is this going to be some? That's why I thought that. Like I mean, I definitely caught on to that. I was like, oh god, is this going to be just like a like anti-gay movie about things bursting into the toilet? Like I was like, this is going to be so immature. That's what I thought it was going to be.
They had to go back and actually film a little scene so that people wouldn't be mad that there's no ghoulie popping out of the toilet.
Wow.
It was never planned. It was added in because of this ad from Charlie Band's mouth.
Yeah.
That's fascinating.
Yeah.
So that's all about marketing right there.
100%. And the fact that you're not familiar with this franchise, because it is a franchise, folks.
Yeah,
There's
it is a franchise.
4 films in this. The reason that you're probably not familiar with this is because it's not the most famous product that came out of Charles Band's. So I think most people would associate him either with Reanimator or with Puppet Master.
Puppet Master,
So it's the same company that's producing those. And if you're going to be honest, like, if I'm going to check out something with shitty puppetry that's an inferior product to Gremlins, probably going to check out Puppet Master.
I did kind of like the little monster design, though.
Oh, yeah. They're actually surprisingly fun.
I want one of them.
Well,
I thought they were kind of cute in a really ugly, fucked up kind of way, but I was like, hell yeah, more. There weren't nearly enough ghoulies in the movie. I was like,
no.
I want more of them. They're very fun and small and gross, but I like them a lot.
You're like, no, it would be great. Less Jonathan Graves and more ghoulies.
Yeah, Jonathan Graves, like, all of a sudden being possessed and, like, yelling words at people.
Oh, my God. Who
more
could
little
care?
tiny creatures. I know. I was like, please, sir.
You're like, it's another white college dropout who thinks that he's all that. Give me the disgusting little creatures with the slime, because at least they got a personality.
Yeah, exactly. Those little dudes have more personality than the human characters, which is hilarious and great.
Joe, do you remember Boglins?
Mm-hmm. Actually, when Mary Beth was like, "Oh, I want like a product. I want one of these," I was like, "Oh, girl, let me tell you about Boglins."
Right, exactly. Do you know what Boglins are, Mary Beth?
No, I do not know what Boglins are.
So in the 80s, around this time when, like, you know, you had the Critters and you had Gremlins and you had this movie, they made these puppets that
so
like
cute.
you could put your hand in, and they come in like a cage, and like you could move their eyes back and forth, and they were adorably creepy.
Yeah.
I had like 2 or 3 of them. I loved them so much.
I want one.
Yeah, it was like, I think the girls got the Garbage Pail Kids if you wanted to go like, you know, a little bit gothy, or if you wanted to go, oh, you're a bit odd or unusual. And then of course the boys were like, here's these things where you can like flap their mouths. And so I think I had 2 of them, and I would put one on each hand and chase after my older sister.
Hell yeah.
I love that.
Probably explains why she would then in turn chase me with a knife, but you know, those are different stories.
Jesus.
So the other thing that you mentioned, Mary Beth, is you talked about the kind of the queer subtext, and Joe and I were kind of DMing each other about it. This movie is gay.
It's so gay. Like the not the guy with the sunglasses, but the guy his like not partner, but kind of partner friend. Like the gaze that he gives him, like the looks, like the longing looks. I was like, that's kind of hot. Yeah. But I was like, this is such a gay movie. Like, and they even go like, should we check in the closet?
And there's like, it's not even, we accidentally mentioned the closet because we wanted to get to the Poltergeist ripoff. It's like they hang on that line reading. Like, oh yeah, so these two be fucking, right? Yes. Yep. Eddie and Mike. So Eddie is the quote unquote regular handsome guy. Mike is like the weird guy who dances and rides a motorcycle and wears glasses. But yeah, Eddie wants to fuck Mike like nobody's business.
But like the way he looks at him was so like, and they linger on him too. It's like they don't just cut away; like they linger on the way he looks at Mike. And I'm like, I love this. More of this, please. I don't care about like the straight couple that's like falling apart. Like I want more of Mike and his handsome friend. Like
yeah. Well, and even right before they say let's look in the closet, there's like a very close up scene of the two of them that like they are within kissing distance, and Eddie is leaning in a bit, and I'm like, oh my god, are they actually going to kiss?
I was like, oh my god, please.
Yeah, breathless anticipation because it's one of the few things that maybe saves this movie.
Right? Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
And like when they first it's like I think it's one of the first when she's like we should have a party and they like zoom up on the motorcycle and they're falling all over each other. I'm like, oh yeah, gay couple, hell yeah, that's what we have.
Well,
in
and
this
Mike
movie.
just like leads Eddie into the party almost by hand when they're coming in. Like I'm like, oh, that was I told Joe I had to like rewind that part because I'm like, did I see that right?
Yeah. Yeah, because it's 1984. Like, this movie got released in early 1985, but it was shot then. You're thinking, movies don't do this. Like, I've watched a number of Nightmare on Elm Streets and Friday the 13th and Halloween's. I'm not seeing this in my early 80s horror.
Yeah.
Or like the gender bending with like the old man when he comes back, the father, and like he's macking on Dick.
Yes, he is, Terry.
Oh, that's
yes,
right.
He is
macking on Dick. Also, side note, Jack Nance, who played Pete Martell in Twin Peaks, is Wolfgang, the groundskeeper, and it was the best part because I love Jack Nance. He's in like all of David Lynch's movies, and David Lynch loves Jack Nance. And when he was Wolfgang and was doing the stuff like the lightning and like appearing and disappearing, Steve and I kept going. Steve, my boyfriend, kept going Jack Nance because we love him so much. So that was also a good saving point of the movie because even though he's in it for 2 seconds and is also the narrator for some reason.
Yeah, why does this movie have a fucking narrator?
Oh my god, I know.
But like,
well,
not
I think because
very
like,
inconsistently.
it actually ends up being like a conflict between the two of them, and the kids are immaterial. Like they don't save the day.
No.
They're saved because of Wolfgang coming in and
zapping him away. But then like Wolfgang disappears and is the narrator, but is only the narrator at the beginning and never is the narrator again, and it's very bizarre.
Yeah.
Also, I would really recommend going to check out the Ghoulies making of because it has an interview with I don't know how to say his name, Michael DeBar. Is that his name? The guy that played Graves, the father,
with the villain.
Yes, because he's like in the interview he says, "Ghoulies, let's make it perfectly clear it was not Citizen Kane, okay?" And he I think there's some animosity with him and Charlie Band because he also makes a comment. He's like, "I'm sure he made a fortune. We did not."
Oh shit!
Oh.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, this is the kind of movie where you can make it on the cheap in a couple of weekends. You know, they're obviously not casting professional actors. And then all you have to do is really come up with a clever art design for your movie cover, and then you just sell the shit out of this to video rental stores.
Yeah. And one other comment that I learned from that is about the glasses that they wore. Because, like, I was watching this movie, like, why are they wearing sunglasses? Mm-hmm. They apparently filmed part of it in 3D. And then decided, and the glasses was going to be, like, the key to the audience to put on your 3D glasses. And then, like 2 days into it, the idea wasn't working, so they abandoned it. But they had the stuff already in there, so they just kept wearing the glasses. But that's the whole reason for the glasses.
That is hysterical. I love it too, yeah, because when you watch this as a modern audience, there's this moment, like they're all just having dinner at this dinner party, but they're all wearing completely different sunglasses. And like the female lead, Rebecca, it looks like she's wearing 3D glasses.
Yeah.
Like the kind of shitty ones that you would get where they're completely disposable. You maybe got them in a magazine at one point. And you're just like, this is a choice that I don't entirely understand.
Oh, man.
Oh, dear.
This movie.
Yeah.
What a film.
It's, I mean, it's always hysterical. I anticipated, having listened to a bunch of your other episodes, where people have an irrational fear of something and then they go back and revisit it as an adult and realize, oh, I think I'm just an idiot because what the fuck with this movie? And this is 100% Ghoulies.
Well,
and yet I had fun watching it.
Yeah, I'm glad I got to watch it. It was a good, like, it wasn't meant to be a Sunday morning watch, but it became a Sunday morning watch. And it was definitely a good, like, Sunday morning horror movie to, like, laugh over coffee. I'm really glad I got to do that.
Yeah.
Same. So thank you, Joe.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, I think it just reiterates that, yeah, there was some great movies that were getting made in the 80s and they were breaking boundaries and trying new things. But there were also a lot of films where their entire modus operandi was literally just, what can we steal from other better movies so that we can cash in and make a few bucks?
Yep.
And that is what this film is.
Yep.
And then you get Ghoulies.
And get Ghoulies. And multiple subsequent franchise entries.
Yeah, good lord.
But also, aren't we overdue for a Ghoulies remake at this point?
Oh, Jesus Christ.
Oh, yeah. Except this time, Eddie and Mike actually do kiss.
Yeah,
Yes.
and they're the main characters.
Yes.
Yes, please.
All of it.
All right. Well, thank you, Joe, for coming on to discuss the delightfully weird Ghoulies. Where can our listeners find you, and do you have anything you want to plug coming up?
I mean, as we talked about off the top, I'm writing for a bunch of different places, so the easiest way to keep track of everything that I'm putting out is... follow me on Twitter. I'm at B Stole My Remote, and that's the letter B. And Horror Queers comes out every Wednesday. And if you want to follow that, we have our own Twitter account for 2020. So you can follow us at Horror Queers.
Awesome.
So you've heard from us, but we want to hear from you. What was your experience with Ghoulies? Send us an email at scarredforlifepodcast@gmail.com or reach out to us on Twitter at Scarred Podcast. We might feature you on an upcoming episode. You can also reach out to me and Terry on Twitter. I'm at MB McAndrews.
And I'm at Gaily Dreadful.
And like I said, tag us at Scarred Podcast if you want to talk to us on Twitter.
And please don't forget to review, rate, and subscribe. It really does help.
It really does. Thank you to Steve Barnold for our artwork. Thank you to Sean Keller for our kick-ass theme song. Thank you to everyone for listening, and stay creepy.
And until next time.
Somebody please think of the children!
Acast powers the world's best podcasts. Here's a show that we recommend.
What is The Briefing Room?
It's a behind-the-scenes look at how the criminal justice system works and the lives of the people within that system.
If you love true crime, well, these are the real people who do the job every day of making sure justice is served.
Hi, I'm Detective Dave.
I'm Detective Dan. Together we have decades of experience in local law enforcement, a profession that we think is often misunderstood.
So we're going to explore how to do it right, and we won't shy away from when it's done wrong. These are stories you'll hear nowhere else. Unique, frank, and unvarnished.
From the team that brought you Small Town Dicks, this is The Briefing Room. Episode 1 drops on August 30th.
We'll meet you in the briefing room.
Acast helps creators launch, grow, and monetize their podcasts everywhere. Acast.com.